So, this encounter happened many years ago and I was very young. It was in 2001 or 2002, and I was 11 to 12 at the time. My uncle was interested in purchasing some land near Red Oak, Oklahoma. I do not know exactly where, but it was several acres in a very remote area. My father, mother, and myself decided to accompany him one Saturday to scope out the property. From our home it was a little more than a 3-hour drive, but we all love riding in the car, so while it was not going to be the most eventful road trip, we went just to get out of the house. Upon arrival, I remember being very underwhelmed by the place. No houses anywhere near, and hardly even any signs of life at all apart from a few birds. And the wooded area wasn't exactly what I would call picturesque. Still, we parked our car off the road to go explore the woods a little. My uncle was talking about buying the land for hunting, not really my cup of tea. As we walked through the woods, it was a very nice day, but still something felt off. Everyone in our group remarked about the eerie feeling, but my dad and uncle seemed to laugh it off. My mom had goosebumps and kept looking over her shoulder, which made me on edge too. She was very insistent that it was weird and she wanted to leave, saying it felt like she was being watched. After a bit of hiking I noticed that there was a small red building. I've seen bigger storage sheds in the suburbs, but it looked well built. My uncle said there was nothing about it on the listing, so we went to peek inside. The door was open, and inside there were open cans of food, a ratty blanket on the floor, and it stunk unlike anything I'd ever smelled before. Following this discovery, we all agreed it would be best to get back to the car if there was some crazy hermit living in the woods we didn't want to be around to find him. Only issue, we had walked pretty far into the woods and now weren't exactly sure which direction was correct. The eerie feeling really amped up and we were all on edge. We ended up trekking another mile before we finally found the road, but we were further down from where we had parked the car, but at least we could just follow the road now. Walking along the road, we came across a truly unsettling sight. Right in the middle of the asphalt was a dark gray cat, on fire. I have no idea why a cat was out in the middle of nowhere or how it came to be killed and set alight. Obviously this had just happened, but there was no one in sight. Naturally, we ran the rest of the way to the car. There was a huge scratch in the paint all down the side of it from hood to trunk. Thankfully that was the only damage and my dad was able to start it without any trouble and we drove away as fast as we possibly could. My heart is sped up just recounting this moment, definitely one of the scariest of my life. Needless to say, my uncle did not buy the land. And I'll always remember this terrifying encounter, but like anything over time I sort of pushed it to the back of my mind and it just became one of those odd moments you occasionally retell at family get-togethers years later, so much that it's almost just a funny story. The reason I'm sharing this is because I was reminded of it last night while binge-watching some episodes of BuzzFeed Unsolved on YouTube when they shared the story of a family that disappeared in the same area, while also looking at some land for sale. The disappearance of the Jameson family is the name of the mystery in the video if you're interested. The family died in the same area we were searching, roughly 7 years after we made our trip there. There are many theories about their deaths, including the allegations of some sort of cult in the area, complete with something about dead cats. Coincidence? Probably. But the whole story gave me chills. So if my family narrowly avoided being killed by some witches or a cult or whatever, or if we just stumbled upon a hermit who didn't want us in his woods. Hey there. I'm the guy who made the weird noises post. I like so much this sub, so I'll share another story happened to me and a friend of mine with you. And this is ways worse than the other one. Here we go. This story takes place in North Italy, back in 2014. It was early September. A friend of mine proposed me to make a short hike in the woods near his town, and I've obviously agreed. Since I love hiking in the nature, we prepared our backpacks, grabbed some food and drove to the place. My friend knew very well the area, so we didn't take a map, we didn't have flashlights neither or else, since we planned to return to the car in a few hours, and in early September daylight lasts still pretty long. As we got deeper in the woods, we saw beautiful spots, small rivers, and a pair of caves we explored. They were pretty small and had only one big chamber. We had lunch, and proceeded to follow a trail in a deeply wooded area. After around half an hour, we were at that point around 50 minutes away from the car. Since we stopped so many times to snap photos or explore areas, we arrived to a pretty large clearance, and here comes the scary part. In that clearance there were a bunch of around 4 to 5 people, normally dressed. They were simply talking and laughing. No satanic cults, dreadful chants, praying in circle or else. Just super ordinary people like me and my friend talking each other. They obviously saw us too, since the clearance had no trees or rocks to cover the view and we couldn't avoid that, since the trail, after a deep curve, immediately ends into the clearance, proceeding to the other side of it. We said, approaching them, since they were in the middle of the track, "Hey there. What's up?" They didn't answer back, and started to stare at us, without saying a single word. This obviously launched a huge red flag. We stopped too and I've looked to my mate. He looked back at me concerned too. We said again, "Hey." No answers. I've started feel uneasy, so we decided to return back to the car. But soon after SE moved back, we realized that they started to follow us. As we noticed it, we yelled, "Why are you following us? Did we do something wrong?" Yeah, we still were pretty young and dumb. In those kind of situations, is often run immediately the fuck out of there if people act this way. No answer, obviously, we proceeded to walk faster and tried to get out of the trail, another pretty dumb choice, but again, my friend knew well the area, but they always were at around 15 meters of distance. We started to panic, so we looked again to each other and agreed to get out of there quickly. As soon as we begun running, we heard that they started to run too. This obviously made us freak out, and we made our best to put more distance between us and them. Another thing that made me panic was the fact that we were, as said, around 40 minutes away from the car at that point in a very isolated area, so I thought that we were obviously hopeless. At a certain point, when we were about half the way back, we started to notice that they weren't behind us anymore. We thought that maybe, and luckily we managed to make them lose our track. The area, as said, is heavily wooded and has plenty of slopes, so that's easy to get lost if you are not used to it. Plus, we took an off-trail way that my friend knew. We hid behind a thick bush, and tried to listen. Silence. Not footsteps, nor voices, and keep in mind that, even when they were following us, they didn't say a single word. So, we took our breath and managed to return to car, trying our best to be as silent as possible. We jumped in the car and raced the fuck out of there. But it doesn't end here. As we left the woods on the main road, we saw coming from a secondary road another car behind us. They were following us again, and they've surely never lose our tracks while we were retuning to the car. We are sure that they were the same people since 1, they were basically tailgating us, 2, the area is very rarely visited and there weren't absolutely zero cars except from my friends 1 and 3, their car had no plates. We drove to my friend's town, avoiding to go to his house, taking every country road, and every turn we made, they did as well. As we reached the town's ingress, they made a U-turn and returned back to the woods direction. We were fucking terrified and we immediately called the police and informed the people that were in the small town square as they approached us, since me and my friend were basically crying as we got out of the car, to check that area out. But no evidence of activity came up in the following hours. They never ever showed up anymore in the following days, but we became paranoid for some weeks to even get out from our houses. And this is why I've took a break from hiking for about 4 years faced with tears of joy. I have no idea who they were and why in the fuck they acted like this. But that experience almost gave me a PTSD. It has been terrifying. And fun fact, both of mine dreadful experiences, this one and the noise one, happened in broad daylight. Eerie. I could give you a million times as a kid and young adult I felt scared or paranoid playing in the woods. It's a beautiful place and I spent my entire childhood getting lost, not literally, out there by myself or with friends. As kids we never got too far out there, but you could actually see the progression of us venturing further and further out as we got older because of forts and carvings we would leave. This one particular time, like 1,000 times before, my friend and I had just graduated high school. It was our last summer of freedom and we spent the entire summer camping and hiking out there. We had decided to try and find a new place to set up camp and walked for what felt like a few miles before we came to a nice clearing. The area was relatively new to both of us. We got the camp set up and fire going and the plan was to wait until nightfall, smoke some weed, and play Monopoly. For sake of backstory on my friend and I. My buddy is a smaller, real goofy guy, but comes from a family of foresters and always had a deep understanding of all the trees and different plants you came across. He had no fear of going and camping out by himself. If I spent 10,000 hours in the woods, he probably spent 50,000. As for me, I'm a taller, sturdier guy, and as we got older I spent more time worried about women and sports, and the woods became a place for small parties. Also, I never had the balls to camp out alone. In fact, older me wouldn't go far at all when I was alone because I could never shake the feeling of being watched. Which was just paranoia, but still an uneasy feeling. Anyways, camp is set, fire is going, but it's getting lower and needs wood. Sun is down and we're both cutting up and having a good time. My friend is sitting on this little chair he always brought and loading up this makeshift bong, and I was crouched breaking some excess limbs off some of the logs we had gathered for the fire. All of a sudden this strong breeze cuts through the clearing. I couldn't tell you if it was the suddenness of it or what, but my friend and I both stopped immediately and looked at each other. The breeze went just long enough to flicker our fire down to a small flame. We both sat completely still in almost total darkness, neither of us said a word. Across from us on the other side of the fire we could hear footsteps. They sounded like somebody was running and would slow to a walk and then run again. Definitely on two legs. By the sound of it they were pacing back and forth over the same spot. Then just like it started it stopped with a softer crunch on the underbrush. I knew by the sound it had taken a crouch. I was crouched still and knew I was staring right at it in the dark. My friend grabbed my shoulder and said, "Buddy," and when he did I felt this surge of fear come over me. I could feel it and hear it in him. I had been so fixed on the footsteps and rationalizing what I heard that I hadn't even considered being afraid. But this was true fear, it was raw and made me feel helpless. I could hear my friend after a while grab some leaves and he dropped them on the fire. For the split second the leaves covered the fire, we were in pure darkness. The fire sprang to life. We both quickly grabbed more leaves and brush and threw it on the fire. I got some sticks and logs on there and neither of us took our eyes off the spot or moved much for over an hour. Finally the leaves crunched and it slowly walked off. Whatever it was had sat crouched watching us without moving for far longer than any animal would. It wasn't until after the footsteps disappeared that I realized the smell had disappeared as well. It smelled like a paper mill. Spoiled eggs almost. For the rest of the night, besides whispered remarks, neither of us really moved or stopped looking at the spot. Nobody went into the tent and I had very short light sleep sitting on the ground with my head rested on my hands. My friend never went to sleep. In the morning we packed up and silently walked back home. To this day we talk about it. In the 7 to 8 years since it happened, my forester friend has not camped by himself out there since.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and share it so more people can join this nice community.